Well, speaking of Switch 2, we have the last topic from Topic Roulette. The Switch 2 rumors, and there's like a lot that has happened from like a few different places. I'm gonna go over the one that was first. First part we're gonna go over the rumors is the part that Pioro sort of backed, saying that stuff he's at least heard about, but doesn't. His primary source at Nintendo won't confirm or deny. It's just something he knows has been going on behind the scenes. And he said he pointed out how it seems to be that it went from like manufacturing is where it seems to be the original source of all the stuff coming from. And this is something that was put up by MobaPad. I'm going to show this here quick. The thing about the MobaPad stuff is they now have this like up on their channel. Up on this is actually like a blog post they have up. They originally put it as a Facebook post. I have one of their controllers. They like are a real Switch accessory manufacturer. The funny thing is they might have actually stole all this information from Billy Bill. So it's kind of weird. But they have the other one's not in English, so we'll just use theirs for now. There might even be some mistakes in it that I'll mention as we get to it. But as you go down, it says exclusive what to expect. You're like, oh, this is just them guessing. No. This is them saying they know. We, like everyone else, are eagerly anticipating accurate information for Switch 2. In the process of developing our next generation controller, MobaPad has acquired a lot of firsthand. They're claiming this is firsthand information, which, by the way, it cannot be firsthand information because if they got it from a manufacturer, Nintendo's firsthand. So, anyways, that's neither here nor there. So they're claiming they were just told. So it says the Switch 2 will continue to support existing Joy-Cons and the Pro Controller, and it'll still be equipped with the Alps dual-axis linear motors for HD Rumble. Then it says the cartridge slot of Switch 2 will support backwards compatibility. The cartridge slot, that's physical backwards compatibility, everyone. But all rumors, of course. And their original post also said digital backwards compatibility, but that's not in this one. So ensuring players with existing game libraries. Oh, there it goes. Actually, they did put it in here. It wasn't in this post originally. Including digital versions. However, the second generation cartridges may not be compatible with the first generation console. They originally said they would not be. Now they're saying they may not be. But I'll get into why there's some weird language in this in a little bit. The new version of the Joy-Con has a larger volume, so it's a bigger controller. And the sliding rail structure has been changed to magnetic suction. The SL, L, and SR buttons are metal buttons. Magnetic suction is achieved through electromagnetic suction technology controlled by electric current. It's worth noting that in addition to the L, ZL, R, and ZR buttons on the sides of the Joy-Con controller, a third button has been added on both the left and right sides. I don't know if they're just talking about the ones below the home button because it says there's one below the home button as well.
It's an extra pair of buttons next to the shoulder buttons,
underneath,
and then also a
third shoulder button. I don't know.
Could be bumpers on the sides, but
yeah, who knows? Maybe the mouse wheel. The mouse wheel's back, baby.
Could be
scroll wheel.
Sounds like the Nitro deck.
Well, the My Nintendo News article showed where it was. It's supposedly like on the underside of the Joy-Con towards the on the back of it, kind of like a paddle.
Maybe paddles.
It could be like paddles like that, or also could just be a button mechanism to just disconnect the controller.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Like they didn't really describe what the button does. Additionally, below the home button on the right Joy-Con, there's an additional function button with no idea what it is or whether it's customizable or if it's just a new feature. I would venture to guess it's probably not customizable. It probably has a function in the OS that we just don't know what it is. Could be a quick menu that pops out where you can turn on like FSR on or off like you can on Steam Deck or something else. Who the heck knows?
Back.
Yeah, and this is the bottom of the Switch 2 will still feature a USB-C port for docking, which isn't a surprise. The new generation dock will undergo minor changes in appearance, so it's going to look different. No surprise there because it probably needs to look different just to differentiate itself. While enhancing performance, supporting 4K resolution, which is funny when they say enhancing performance. The dock, guys, is not going to have extra tech in it. Like, can we just stop pretending? They're just talking about the fact that the HDMI outputs a 4K signal. That's what I think, anyways.
Well, personally. I think they're just trying to explain what the Switch already does. Performance improves because it clocks higher.
Sure, yeah. It'll be higher clocked in it. The new dock will feature a damping bracket on the back, allowing for a greater range of adjustable angles. So they're talking about the kickstand. the screen will be upgraded to an 8-inch display, which is something we've already heard, although they are saying 1080p. Second time we've heard it might be a 1080p screen. This is just some of the hardware information we've got, not the full extent. From the hardware perspective, Switch 2 inherits the dual mode feature of the predecessor. And this isn't actually new information here. They're just kind of recapping some stuff. A lot of the weird language in here, by the way, is because I do think that they just kind of jacked this information and wanted clout. But what are you going to do about that? That's like one of the many rumors that are going on. There's also some from like Business Korea. I won't show it on screen, but I'll just point out there's a My Nintendo news article that I can drop a link to if you guys want. That just kind of summarizes it up as an example. The most interesting part about it is that the Switch 2, they say, could launch the earliest in the second half of this year. That really got a lot of people talking because their information seems to be coming directly from manufacturing as well. Suppliers have reportedly reached a considerable degree of agreement for initial production contracts. So the production contracts are done, so they're going to begin production here at some point. The Samsung foundry will fabricate the SoC. This is one that's got people talking as well. The SoC, the system on a chip, the actual thing that runs everything, might be a 7 LPH process node. Fun fact about the 7 LPH process node with Samsung, it doesn't actually exist in any of their public documentation. It's only ever been a rumored processing node. So this would be like the first commercial product that would actually be using this.
It's exciting.
So there's that. Granted, 7 nanometers is not what people wanted. People wanted 4.
Maybe it also has antimatter propulsion.
This is a custom processing node that's never been in a product, so we don't really know what the efficiencies of that processing node are. Samsung will provide the NAND storage for the cartridge internal memory. They also talked about it being a V5 NAND flash stuff that we've had rumored.
All
before.
that's exciting to me.
That is exciting. It's faster.
Right, but they also mentioned internal storage, which
this will be an internal. Yeah.
But it would have been weird to only have it.
Well, some people wanted it to be an NVMe, and I'm just like, it's more expensive. They're going to go with probably something solder to the board. Samsung overcame other supply competitors for the display. So apparently Samsung's providing the display again. This is all rumored. This information has been corroborated, by the way, by some other people. Or Aura XDA, who is a leaker for Samsung products specifically, is also corroborating this.
You may not have seen this, but the original post that put that out for Business Korea, they actually took down the leaker part because they later decided that they weren't very credible.
Sure.
The Aura XDA person. Right?
Yeah, the Aura.
I saw something about that on.
The Aura XDA person. The reason I never, by the way, that's the first time I mentioned Aura XDA. I didn't bring it up in any of my videos because in the digging I did, I realized that they kind of throw a lot of stuff out there.
That's probably why they took it down.
So, but this is just something that this person supposedly corroborated, but they're not a reliable corroboration.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Business Korea is supposedly reliable on their own. Supposedly.
Yeah, and Korea is, by the way, for those who don't know, where the Samsung factories are located. So that's why people are really paying attention to this, because they realistically could be directly connected to the manufacturers.
Yeah.
So Switch 2 is expected to launch. Okay, yeah, that's all done. The chip is still the Tegra 2 the T239. Thing has been rumored since the NVIDIA leak. And this is the thing that has some people talking as well. The display is apparently going to be an OLED. It's the first time we've heard the OLED term tossed around. But then they also note that there could be LCD models at launch and OLED would actually be later. It sounds like to me there might be a contract for OLED screens, but those aren't like launch models. That could be a future.
But I mean, how future proof?
Or there could be multiple systems at launch and one's an OLED screen. I don't know.
That makes more sense to me.
Could be.
I wouldn't be opposed to them doing a 400, 450 LCD and OLED. Right there.
Yeah, OLED would clearly just take the cake.
It would.
For whatever reason, I don't see Nintendo doing 2 SKUs at launch. I don't know why.
They did it with the Wii U.
They did. They did.
That went really well. That went so well.
It worked out, but they've done it.
Yeah.
It's a really old rumor too, right? The 2 SKUs, like a digital only.
Yeah, there's been one of those. Special Nick was one of the people who said he originally heard something about that behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I hope they don't. I mean, honestly, for simplicity, they shouldn't. And it's a Nintendo thing to not do 2 SKUs. But I mean, that's what most other console Sony and Microsoft each do 2 SKUs every time.
It's the norm now, right?
Yeah.
So Nintendo does adopt to norms.
I think crowds are more, because everyone else is doing it. We have all these SKUs of phones now. Like, I think fans are more.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why they would do it. Because
it works so great for Xbox.
If the general masses kind of understand how multiple SKUs work, maybe Nintendo will be like, okay, well, people will get it, so we'll do it.
I think also when they did it with the Wii U, I'm presuming Nintendo's going to have a massive amount of games to advertise and push the system. And that's something they didn't have with Wii U. I mean, they were pushing it with Nintendo Land and Pikmin and Mario Deluxe U. Don't get me wrong, I like all those games. I actually think Nintendo Land's extremely underrated. I wish I would have got ported to the Switch. That game is amazing. But my thing is that there's going to be games that people actually want to play. Advertising the system that I think a multiple SKU thing could work. And it's going to be sold out at launch anyways.
Yeah.
So
will it include Drift?
well, actually, what's
gonna
interesting,
say it right on the box. Actually, this
well, that's actually that's the name of the next
included.
console, the Nintendo.
Yeah, call it the Switch Drift.
So joking aside,
And
though, right?
Mario Kart confirmed at launch. Then
There we go. I mean, that's the only way I think there will be Drift if Mario Kart's a launch title, because apparently the new Joy-Cons are bigger. And so if they're bigger, to me, that makes you feel pretty good about it, because, they'll be able to fit in more. It'll be a bit more spacious, less cramped. Maybe
Give me a
less cheap
Hall
out on the
sensing
control
stick.
sticks.
Yeah.
It's just cheaping out. There's a company in Ghoulie Kit that makes Hall sticks that fit in your Joy-Cons today. You don't need a bigger one. They just need to do it. It's just more expensive. That's all. That's it. It's just a cost thing.
Something else I think we should... Did you mention the Vandal rumor?
I did not mention that one. You can bring that one up, and I have an additional one that dropped yesterday as well.
That's cool. So with the Vandal one, that was kind of like the first report that broke out last
that was the
week,
first one last week. Yep.
And it didn't mention as much as the MobaPad leak.
Yeah, that
thing.
one kind of overtook it quick.
But the MobaPad leak thing kind of corroborates the Vandal one, because it also talked about the magnetic Joy-Cons. And
they were the first ones.
Yeah, and this is where we heard about. So apparently, the manufacturers were only allowed to touch the Switch 2 and not see it, so they had to put their hands inside of a box. But from what they heard, the console is bigger than this. Well, not heard, from what they felt. The console is bigger than the Switch, but smaller than the Steam Deck. So that's interesting. And I'm very curious how the magnetic thing is going to work. But what's most curious to me is that we're just seeing multiple places sort of say similar things.
And then PRO saying that he's been aware of this for a while. It's been talked about behind the scenes a lot.
And so a few people in the chat noted that Pioro didn't say this is all 100%.
He literally said his primary source didn't confirm, also didn't deny it.
Right. So basically what this means is Piero's just saying some of the things in here are probably true.
He's saying he's heard of it. That this isn't a mystery to him. This isn't new information to him, is what he's saying.
So I'm curious, because I feel like most of the stuff in this, rumor, leak, whatever you want to call it, a lot of it's kind of par for the course from what we've heard multiple
Nothing
times.
super crazy.
The thing that I'm curious about, and I wanted to ask your guys' opinion, is what do you think about the magnetic Joy-Cons thing? Because for me, that's the one piece of this that's a little bit hard to wrap my head around. I'm not a huge tech head, so the tech of it sounds very bizarre to me, but it also sounds very expensive to me, and it sounds bizarre. I don't know.
Well,
I'm trying to wrap my head.
Two things. One, there are going to be legal court cases about people throwing their new Joy-Cons at the fridge and it getting stuck. But two, I feel like this is probably just a nifty little innovation Nintendo discovered that would work really well, probably relatively affordable. Otherwise, I don't think they would include it. I think there's a reason why they would go in this direction over what they have for the current Switch setup. I don't think they would just do it just to be different. I hope. So, I imagine they just found something that's just really cool and works well.
You just gave me an idea. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just wanting to note they actually had patents for magnetic Joy-Cons for the Switch. Nintendo's actually already explored this idea for the original Switch, and they obviously ended up not going with it. I think they even said something about an interview very early in the Switch's life cycle about the connection, and talked about how they experimented with magnets and it just didn't work out. To me, the magnet thing would just be, it's not replacing the rail. There will still be some sort of rail. This is in addition to, because one of the things that Nintendo showed with the Switch OLED is they're willing to do quality of life stuff. And one thing that people have complained with the Joy-Cons over time is wobble. They wobble in there. And some people are getting connection issues due to the wobble. Sometimes the Joy-Cons don't always stay connected. So one way to fix that is, the rails okay, they're inevitably going to loosen up over time, right? We're dealing with plastic and metal, it bends.
Sure.
But how can we make that connection stronger? Let's have a couple magnets involved.
Yeah.
Now,
Well, that
magnets
makes a lot
themselves
more
aren't that expensive, by the way. There's plenty of electronics that use them for connections and different things. I mean, MagSafe with Apple, I know they charge an arm and a leg, but it doesn't actually cost them that much to
Don't
do.
magnets wear down over time?
That's the electromagnet part of it.
Yeah, I was going
Right.
to chime in on the electromagnetic part because I couldn't wrap my head around it until I was reading that from the MobaPad post. And then I went into the Reddit thread that was talking about it, and people were explaining, like, they called them mag switches, but essentially when there's like that electromagnetic pulse, that it's kind of like an on-off switch for the magnet. And the way they're
Weird.
describing it is like when it's on, it's like going to be so strong that you're not going to be able to physically separate it. And when it's off, you're going to be able to pop it off like a regular magnet. That makes a lot more sense to me. And maybe you could argue we don't even need a super rail system at that point at all. You know, it might literally be like an attach. And hopefully
There's a
PC.
PC. There's a handheld PC with detachable Joy Cons that does use electric magnets, so it's not like a new thing. It does exist.
Yeah,
That's interesting. I mean, it's neat. For some reason, I was under the impression these reports were saying that there wasn't rails, but maybe I just misheard or.
They're saying they attach
misread.
via magnets, but or a magnetic system, but they're not really saying there isn't a rail. But
I just don't think we have clarification on if it is or isn't.
it could be
If there's not a rail, it could be an indent at least.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like it fits in there, and then once the electromagnetic part is locked in,
disable or you enable or
and
disable.
one of the buttons, maybe that function button is
that
a
could literally be what
release.
it is. Function button could be a release.
Wow.
If there's no rails, kids are going to be stuck. Their Switch,
Someone's gonna get their
screaming
hand
like,
pinched.
get my hands off my Switch. Like, no way.
Wishful thinking, but maybe that third operational button, not the shoulder buttons but the third
Function
button
button.
under the function button. Maybe that's having to do with social connection features, like pulling up your friends list and seeing who's online to.
Yeah,
Now we're pipe dreaming. Now we're
it's probably a window that pops up that says to open your Nintendo app on your Android or iOS.
It's a dedicated NSO button.
But you can at least see your online friends, but to talk to them, you got to go through the phone. No,
I mean,
I
that would even still be a leap forward for that.
Yeah, I do hope it's a social feature. I thought about that too. I mean, in a perfect world, Nintendo would just adopt Discord, but I don't think they'll do that. But they might have, or maybe they will, because maybe that's the way that they get around any responsibility of their whatever the excuse is that Nintendo's afraid to do online voice chat.
Heavy Discord integration would be awesome.
We know they like Discord.
Yeah, I mean, and
they like to go after things on Discord.
That took me like 0.75 seconds to get.
They're already in some of those groups, so you know.
Yeah, we know they're active on there, so they bring it on in. They're already monitoring.
It's cool.
It's Miiverse version 2.
Yeah, what do you guys think about the new buttons in the back though? Like, what kind of application would those have? Is it just like extra buttons for?
It could be magnetic disconnect button.
Bro, I was thinking that could be
that's
that.
a good point. It could just be that. Yeah,
I'm actually worried about their placement. Go ahead. Sorry. What'd you say, Game Bird Classic?
Oh, I was just saying. I think it's that or paddles.
That or paddles. Okay.
Yeah, the Joy-Con are a little bigger. Like my fingers are right here.
Yeah,
so
I'm worried
they're
about
a little
the
bit
placement.
bigger.
I'm worried about, like, I don't want it to be one of those things where I'm accidentally hitting it all the time. If it's actually something that's an assigned button for certain games, you know, those can get kind of iffy for me.
I'm looking at the placement, and it looks like a Wiimote B button the way it's sitting back there.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's gonna be like a thing for motion controls.
What if it's a scroll wheel button? That'd be cool.
So you guys, obviously, this is the Nitro deck, but you see these buttons back here?
Yeah.
They just have these as mappable buttons.
Yeah.
So I guess it depends on if this button's going to be big innovation, like typical Nintendo style
First ever
innovations.
mappable button included with your control with the console.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Hear me out. So you know the idea of the scroll wheel button, right? Like, so it's
Which, by the way, people who say it's crazy, Sakurai said he's been telling Nintendo about this idea for like decades.
And it's basically a shoulder button. You can press it to, like a normal shoulder button, but it can scroll, so you can kind of go through. It's like, imagine like in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, where you kind of trying to scroll through items with your stick. You do it with the wheel instead. But imagine Prime 4 being a cross-gen title. You can use each of new scroll button to scroll through your visors on one side and your beams through the other.
Or a
Yeah.
zoom.
Dude,
That'd
there's
be
so
cool.
many uses for scroll
Oh,
wheels.
zooming.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
scope
zooming
zoom.
would be good.
Dude, there's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
many uses for like when Sakurai like when
Quick
that original
rotation.
rumor came up about that crazy airplane story and the security thing, it's like okay, yeah, maybe probably made up. Who knows? Oh, this person gave their actual airport information. Turns out they really are. Okay, cool. Well, it's whatever. And then Sakurai comes on and says, "Oh yeah, by the way, here's a completely separate video on this exact same idea that I've been telling Nintendo for 20 years." And it's like, oh, so somebody who actually could maybe get something done has literally been trying to get this exact thing into a system. Okay,
And
then you got to take it a bit more serious that Nintendo would have had to seriously consider it at some point and might still consider it, especially if Sakurai's like, hey, this is one of those things I want for the next Smash game. And then they asked Nintendo's developers, and they're like, yeah, dude, we got lots of uses if we had that scroll wheel.
I think it would also what's kind of interesting about it is like you look at the mouse, you got a little scrolling button,
Yeah.
right? It
Very
it
useful.
would add
Yep.
just another little thing that console controllers could have that help to kind of mitigate the gap between PC and keyboard. Like
Bet
mouse
you
and
get
keyboard.
used more than that
Mm.
touchpad on the PlayStation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it would.
Good point, Andres.
Yeah,
It's it's a more natural fitting mechanism for gaming. I feel like on a controller. I know
I
people
think
love
so.
like the touchpads on Steam Deck, and that's great. And I know some people would like to have touchpads on the thing, but the whole screen's a touch screen. I don't really know that we necessarily need the touchpad. I think the actual wheels would just be way more useful for quick navigation of certain things. I mean, imagine even just thinking of current games like Tears of the Kingdom. We have that whole weapon selection thing. Well, now you
Yeah.
just scroll a little wheel for it instead of having to hold a
I was
button and go
thinking
to a
that
sub
too.
menu.
Mario Maker 3.
Mario, it'd be great for Mario Maker. It'd be great for
That would be
Splatoon.
really good.
Good point.
Dude, it'd be
Well, what
great.
if you can use
I
it
can't
just
think of
to,
a
like,
game it'd be
move left
bad
and right?
for.
like what if you could just use it like turn left and right? Because like so I like using the gyro controls in a lot of shooters,
Sure.
especially Splatoon, right? I think it's really good for vertically looking up and down, but it's still kind of awkward to look left and right quickly with gyro controls. But a scroll wheel might be a bit more intuitive. So
Yeah. I also want to throw out there that there was another rumor that came yesterday from Moore's Law is Dead. If you guys don't know who he is, he's a fellow content creator, well-known insider with a lot of different tech companies. His whole channel is based around it because he knows employees. Like when I say he knows, he's had several leaks in the past for NVIDIA, AMD, Intel, all these companies. Literally, he'll say this and he's got a source on it, and then it gets announced months later, and it's literally exactly what he said. And really, what he got a lot of attention for lately was his PlayStation 5 Pro stuff. He was the one who put out all of the specs for PlayStation 5 Pro. And the funny thing about that was he did that, and then all the major outlets corroborated exactly what he said. So, like, it's kind of crazy. And he put out specs, by the way, a while back for Switch 2 that a lot of people just sort of like dismissed, former NVIDIA employee, yada, yada. Well, he went out yesterday on his podcast and he said, hey, I got, my NVIDIA employees have been talking again. And they're going over all the different handheld tech coming out for like PC and stuff. And they had a Switch 2 section. He's like, all right, here's the thing. My guy at NVIDIA told me that the entire goal of Switch 2 in docked mode is to get as close as possible to 4 teraflops in docked mode. And then in handheld mode would be significantly less, which, to give you guys an idea, Switch, when it launched, handheld mode was only 40% capable of what the Switch in docked mode could do. So I don't know how much a significant, what does that mean? And so he asked him, he's like, well, what about clocks? Like, and he only asked what handheld clocks said, we're talking like under 800 megahertz. And the guy said, yeah, it's going to be under 800 megahertz in handheld mode, which is a little interesting because Switch in docked mode is 768 for the GPU. But here's the thing, we're talking about completely different technologies. So like we can throw out all the tech numbers and all the stuff. Comparing it to anything today is very strange. Like even when people try to compare it to like 2050s and 2060s, it's like, well, okay, but this is a completely custom chip with custom feature sets that doesn't actually exist in the marketplace at the moment for us to really have anything to compare to. But I think what the fascinating part is with that tech and like 4 teraflops, one that falls kind of in what we sort of heard, like PlayStation 4 Pro, maybe Xbox Series S territory, because that's also like 4 teraflops. But again, they're using AMD versus NVIDIA, which also has tensor cores that can be used for DLSS hardware cores specific for that. So I find it really fascinating. And I think what this does is it just sort of brings into picture what Nintendo's vision is for this platform. Like, yeah, it's still older technology, but because I want to be very clear here, the difference between this when people always keep comparing to PCs are so much more powerful. I understand that. There's no big AAA developer that's specifically, when they make a PC game, looking at any of those individual handheld PCs and going, yeah, we're going to optimize directly for that particular one or that particular one or that particular one. They do a blanket thing that has to fit a bunch of different specs and technologies in the PC space, whereas Switch is going to be a hard set platform. It's this chip. It runs at this speeds in handheld, this speeds in docked. That's what it is. This is what you have to work with. Games are going to be so much more optimized for it. So even when you're thinking, well, yeah, modern games are only barely hitting whatever on these handheld PCs, that's fine. They're not optimized for those at all. And they're all using, by the way, AMD technology. Tell me one of them that's using NVIDIA. They're not. NVIDIA would love those contracts. They don't have. There's actually one using Intel Arc right now. We have an Intel Arc handheld PC before we had an NVIDIA one. So there is a lot to say here where I think Nintendo kind of knows what they're doing. They went with NVIDIA, who is the leader in GPUs, who knows what they're doing. They're seemingly spearheading the majority of development on the chip. I'm actually kind of excited. And I also think we've reached a point where visuals aren't like the thing that sell games anymore. How many pretty games have we seen, but then they don't sell well? I don't think visuals are as big of a deal anymore as people make them out to be. I think we all want the best looking stuff, but people are now starting to realize the gameplay, the story, all that stuff actually matters a lot more.
Say that to Stellar Blade.
Yeah, about time.
Yeah. So I honestly, you combine this with all like there's going to be some tech upgrades and some improvements and better, hopefully better ergonomics. I'm excited, man. I know it's all rumors and it could all be bullshit, but man, some of this has to be real, and I'm excited.
I mean, like, the Switch 2 is obviously going to be more powerful than the Switch, right?
Yeah.
And something that I think is worth pointing out is that the Switch is, from a graphics perspective, is a marginal jump over the Wii U. The crazier part is that it made it handheld. The Switch 2 is going to be like an actual next generation leap over the Switch. So we're going to see a significant leap in like visual fidelity and performance for Nintendo games. And that's going to be exciting to see, how 3D Mario is going to look, how Mario Kart's going to look, maybe a next gen version of Prime 4, or maybe eventually like, Ocarina of Time remake or whatever the next Xenoblade is going to look like. Like these games are going to look insane. And from a marketing perspective, that's going to help the system out a lot. Like that's going to excite a lot of people.
All right. I know Landon has to dip out here in a moment, and the show's going to be over in a little bit anyways, but Landon, you got any thoughts on all this crazy Switch 2 stuff before you head out?
I'm ready to throw my Joy-Con at the Switch and see if it sticks. Just
yes.
Magnetically.
Yeah.
They released and updated. It's now on all Joy-Cons.
I mean, just what Andres was saying. I mean, it's already Mario, so I'm like, you don't need Mario to look hyper realistic. So any better now would just already be insane, because like I will die on the hill that Luigi's Mansion 3 looks fantastic. I mean, it's one of the best games.
I just think of like physics and gameplay ability, what they're going to be able to do. That's
it's just going to get even crazier. So I mean, I'm here for the games. Just it's going to be the next Mario game is going to be stellar. We already know that. So
not Stellar Blade.
Not Stellar Blade, unless Mario has a collab and
crossover with Stellar Blade, Dad Ass and the Mario Flat Ass from the movie. Got it.
There you go. Yeah,
perfect combo.
I'm just excited.
All right, awesome. Who else wants to chime in on all this craziness?
I got some thoughts.
Yeah, sure, I'm sure you do.
Okay, so I like the point that you said, Nate, about like gameplay has always been king, and for Nintendo it always has been, but it really feels like from the PS4 and Xbox One generation to the PS5 and Xbox Series generation is when people noticed that games were already looking good enough and people just want them to actually be released in a reasonable amount of time and have fun gameplay mechanics. And that's where I feel like a lot of this generation has become like the scrutiny of online gamers, like dissecting if the frame rate's too low or something's wrong. Like they're hung up on the visuals and they forget to have fun with the games. But all of that said, I feel like Nintendo having a hybrid console that's powerful enough to get those PS4 Pro level visuals is like the perfect spot of where they need to land. Like, even if they're here for another 7 years, that's as much power as we really need to still have an incredible experience with our games. And we're now going to be in the conversation, at least for the next 4 or so years, to get a lot of native third-party support that we wouldn't have got without this power. So if it's anywhere close to that 4 teraflops, even though that's not a great like metric to, like you said, apples to apples comparison doesn't really work. But if we get anywhere near that PS4 Pro level raw horsepower with DLSS and ray tracing and things included, like modern tech, I think Nintendo's set. I really do. And outside of like the massive scope games like a GTA 6 that might have a hard time running on Switch 2, maybe it won't, but I could imagine that one having some hiccups. If we get the majority of big third-party titles, or at least are in the conversation for them, and it's not such a large gap like it is right now, I just think that it's going to land in a great spot. So, I don't put all the stock in the world in the report, but I do think that Moore's Law is dead. To your point, the PS5 Pro specs leak was like super recent. So this seems in the wheelhouse of being realistic. And it's not saying anything outlandish or anything that's really even that far off from what we've heard before. So it very well could be right in line with what we should expect. And it'll run all the Call of Duties from Microsoft that way too, because I'm pretty sure they were scratching their heads figuring out how to get that stuff to run on the base model Switch.
Well, the funny thing is, one of the counters I heard was, "Oh, the Steam Deck's not even as powerful as that." And it's like, again, one, the Steam Deck came out a bit ago at this point. Let's just start there. And two, again, it's using AMD technology. We're talking about a completely different tech that kicked the shit out of AMD when it came out for that. The tech it's using, by the way, is the same technology that came out around the same time as the RDNA 2 stuff that's in PlayStation 5. And at that time, NVIDIA kicked the shit out of what AMD was doing in terms of GPU. Obviously, processor, that's a different competitor. But so like, I think people don't really understand what a fully custom NVIDIA ARM system can do, where all the developers that want to make games for are literally just optimizing for that, rather than worrying about all the other stuff, all the other NVIDIA GPUs, all the CPUs, just optimizing just for that. I think you're going to see things that beat some of the performance of those low setting, barely running on some of those handheld PCs that are way more expensive, because these games aren't being optimized for those platforms. They can't. The tech just keeps changing too quick. They're dropping these new platforms like every 6 months.
There was a lot of conversation around Starfield when it launched on PC, and how many people were just saying it ran just complete ass, and they were so unhappy with it.
Yeah.
And then it was literally the developer. I don't know if it was actually Microsoft's developers. It very well may have not been, but developers were chiming in saying, like, guys, you don't understand releasing a game on a PC and customizing it for each graphics card that's on there, the optimization and the time that takes. Whereas now you can look at it and it runs significantly better, but that took a solid 6 months after release to figure all that stuff out. And to your point, when it's one custom SoC, that's all you're developing it for. That's a big difference. So
compared to Switch, this is going to be a massive leap. Eric, I know you usually don't have a lot to say on this topic. You just want the damn thing.
Yes, that's pretty much where I'm
starting. But are you happy with what you're hearing with these rumors?
Yeah, I mean, even if half of them are true, that'd be freaking fantastic. I don't know which ones I want for half to be true, but
for me, the power is the most important to me, because the power unlocks gameplay abilities for Nintendo that I think Nintendo will use that power in ways that other companies aren't, because they're so focused just on visuals. Whereas Nintendo will find a way, like the next Zelda game with PS4 Pro power. Dude, look what they did with Tears of the Kingdom. What the hell are they going to do with that level of processing? And
Space is next.
Well, I'm just saying, to them, compared to what they were working with Switch, it would almost feel like they almost have unlimited possibilities. Yeah. And that makes me like a Nintendo teams that feel like they aren't limited. That to me makes me just smile.
And not only crazy. Not only games like Zelda, but Animal Crossing could be so much bigger.
Yeah, the 3D Mario, like Odyssey was great, but what if they only did like those partial worlds, because that's just tech limitation? Okay, we don't got that now.
Imagine if Animal Crossing was at 60 frames per second.
There we go. That's the big one. There's the game changer right there.
Wave
when-
race. Give me wave race.
Yes, Wave Race.
I'm here
Love it.
for it.
Oh, but Matt, can you? Wave Race 64 had the most incredible like water graphics. Can you imagine what they could do like now?
The
They
look
need
and
to do-
feel, the physics
need-
behind the water too is just amazing.
Oh yeah, no, you're so
They
right.
need to do
When I hit my first wave, I would literally think I'm about to get wet right now.
HD Rumble just feels like you're in the water.
Oh yeah.
Oh, they put a heat and
know.
cold sensor in there too, so it slowly chills. As the water
Oh,
goes.
like
Or but if you
Arctic Thunder in the arcade.
bro,
Who
if they had
played
Arctic
that?
Thunder, when you use the boosters, that's when it turns hot. Oh
Yeah, you remember it would hit you with the cool air.
Yeah, that'd be so awesome.
No.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yes,
No,
we're getting a 4D Switch, like those 4D theaters. Let's go.
Yes. No, but kind of back to what
You can smell the
Sunbro was
pickles.
talking about, like with the power of the system, it made me think about back on the GameCube days when Resident Evil came out and how that was like. Remember the discussion between Xbox and PS2 and the GameCube and then all of a sudden Resident Evil comes out and it's like, yo, like this is no joke, right? Like I would love to see a similar conversation happen when the next Switch comes out, and it's like
I think it will.
I do too. I mean, we were close to it with like Luigi's Mansion 3, like that game,
Yeah.
you know, like you guys mentioned, it's just incredible, and so
beautiful.
Yeah,
The animations alone in that game are just.
I don't know if gamers on other platforms that always diss Nintendo are ready to see Nintendo games literally no long just visually standing toe to toe with everything they got going on. Meanwhile, getting higher reviews because the gameplay is crazy.
You know, Nintendo's been saying this.
And like
for
bug free, by the
decades.
way. Thank you, Nintendo, for actually giving a shit about bugs in your games.
What were you getting at, Steve?
Pokemon
Nintendo's
aside.
been saying this for decades. I forget if it was Iwata or if it was before that, if it was Reggie. But it was the whole thing about graphics and that it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
And they've said this at almost every generation. It seems like shortly after the specs come out for their new consoles that, you know, there's going to come a time where reach a point where graphics across the board on all platforms aren't going to matter. And what's going to matter is the things that should matter, in my opinion, or they matter to me at least. Gameplay, right? Is
They
it
matter
fun?
to everyone. Look at the most
Yeah,
popular
they
games
should.
in the world. And they're not
Right.
the most graphically pleasing.
Exactly. It's all about the gameplay. Gameplay will always be king, and Nintendo's king at gameplay. We know that. So I think with Nintendo having, let's just say, again, I don't think this is an apples to apples comparison when you look at specs for the Switch 2 and you try and compare it to like PS4 Pro specs, because like you guys all mentioned, we're working with new technology here. But let's just say Nintendo's working with PS4 Pro, possibly better because it's newer tech, and that's the power they're working with. What Nintendo can do with that is going to be insane because they never have that power. They're wizards when it comes to this stuff. We all know this. We've seen it over the years. So this is going to be special. If these specs are anywhere close or possibly better, this is going to be insane.
Let's just put it this way.
1,000-year door. Will
If you-
finally
if
get
you were
to
one of-
60 FPS.
If you were one of the 13 million Wii U owners, which I was, if you didn't think Switch was a big leap over Wii U, which is fine, there's lots of good looking games on Wii U, you're going to be shocked at how much of a leap this is going to look like in comparison to Switch. I think it's going to floor you because it was a massive leap if you came from 3DS. But if you came from Wii U, it didn't quite feel as big of a leap. Just wait. This is the leap from PS3 to PS4.
It's going to be massive.
And that
All
was
I
a
can-
massive leap. At the
all
time.
I can think about is the way Forza, the way they were showing the reflection, and I'm just like, I just want to see Bowser in the reflection of the pipe frame. I'm sorry.
It's good. It's gonna
Oh,
happen.
yeah.
It's gonna happen.
That's going to be rad.
So are you telling me the Switch 2 is going to be like a Switch and a Wii U duct taped together? 'Cause that would be pretty powerful.
No,
There you go.
magnetized.
Oh,
Yeah,
there you go.
There it is. That's how it does.
And maybe
All
there'll be
right.
a peripheral where you could like attach it to your back with like a metal like jacket.
That's called Labo.